From high up on pillars to deep in the Antarctic, here are 10 of the most amazing isolated homes in the world. Number 10. The Drina River House. You've always wanted a house surrounded by a moat, right? Everyone has. But how about taking it a step further and building your home in the middle of a river? The moat's taken care of for you. Well, that's what a group of boys decided to do in 1968 when they were looking for the ideal spot to sunbathe. The rock they chose wasn't so comfortable, so over time they added floorboards, then walls, and then a roof, with all materials transported to the site by boat. The house has, unsurprisingly, been victim to flooding of the Drina River, which nearly destroyed it several times. Every time it was built again from the ground up. Despite its remote location on the eastern edge of the Tara National Park in Serbia, it's still fairly close to the local town of Bajina Basta, so there's not too far to go to get supplies. Even so, this solitary house seems as if it were just surrounded by nothing but nature for miles around. Would you live in this house? Let me know in the comments below. Number 9. Casa do Penedo. The Casa do Penedo, which means the House of Stone, is in the Fafe Mountains of northern Portugal. The 16.5-foot tall house, built at 2,600 feet above sea level, is often referred to as the Flintstones House, and it's clear to see why. The house has actually been constructed between 4 large granite boulders and took 2 years to complete after work began in 1972. While it doesn't have any electricity, to keep with the Flintstones theme, it does have a large fireplace and even a swimming pool that's carved into one of the bigger rocks. For those concerned about safety, not that I think that you were worried, but you'll be glad to hear that the doors and windows are all completely bulletproof, something that would keep the owners feeling secure when they spent their holidays there. Not sure why they thought that was necessary. I guess you'll have to go there to find out. Now the house has been turned into a museum and is open to any visitors willing to make the morning's walk up the side of the mountain to see it. Number 8. The Crystal Mill. The Crystal Mill is one of the most famous and isolated homes in Colorado. It was built on a rocky outcrop in the Crystal River and is surrounded by the most amazing views. It's about 6 miles away from Marble and is close to the former town of Crystal. It's so remote that it's only accessible during summer and fall months by a 1-lane track, and only accessible by foot across treacherous terrain at other times of the year. It's best to only really go there if the weather is good, basically. The mill was originally constructed in 1893, and the flowing water would be used to power its air compressor, which in turn powered drills in the nearby mines. It was known as the Sheep Mountain Powerhouse and was crucial for the miners to be able to drill the holes into the rock. Then they would fill them with dynamite and blow everything up to release the ore. The mill's functional role ended in 1917 and has since been used as a home and a popular visitors attraction. Which do you prefer, the Flintstones or the mine? And now for number 7, but first, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on the latest videos. Number 7. The Katskhi Pillar. How far would you go for your beliefs? Religious devotion can lead people to make big sacrifices for their faith, but one monk has taken the idea of isolation to a whole new level. Maxim Kaftaradze has spent the past 20 years living in a cottage on the Katskhi Pillar, a 131-foot tall rock that stands above his monastery in Georgia. He lives his life in almost complete solitude high above his Georgian monastery. It's such an isolated place that the only means of accessing the home is by a 131-foot ladder, something that takes 20 minutes in each direction. Maxime does it twice a week to pray with his followers. He became a monk after doing time in prison and wanted to make a change in his life. There is now a small religious community down below, and his followers also winch supplies and other things to him whenever he needs them. He very rarely allows visitors to climb the pillar. Those that do are required to spend a number of days praying at the base before being deemed pure enough to make the ascent. Originally, it took him years to complete construction of his cottage, and to start with, he was forced to sleep in an old fridge until he had hoisted a bed frame up there. It might seem like an extreme place to live, but the practice of living on top of the Katskhi Pillar has its roots in the 15th century, when Christian monks would live in such places to avoid worldly temptation. Makes it a lot easier. Also, that way it was easier to feel closer to God and feel His presence. That's nice, right? Number 6. Wordie House. If you like the cold and staying indoors for most of the year, then maybe this is the place for you. Wordie House is one of the most remote buildings on the planet, located on Winter Island in Antarctica. It was a former outpost known as Base F that was set up by the British during the Second World War to protect their interests from Argentina. After that, it became a base for scientific operations in the following years. Its role was primarily as a meteorological research station, but in 1954 it was replaced by another outpost on a nearby island, leaving Base F as a relic of a far-gone age. Today, it's known as Wordie House, in honor of James Wordie, the chief scientist on Shackleton's trans-Antarctic mission between 1914 and 1917, in case anyone asks you in history class. It's maintained by the British Antarctic Heritage Trust and remains virtually identical to how it was when it was in use. It has a kitchen and a bunk room to hold up to 5 people with a wooden stove for warmth. The bookcases along the walls are full of books and board games, a telling sign that there wasn't much to do here over the winter months when it would snow for days on end. You can just probably imagine. You can actually go visit and stay at the house today, and it offers a unique opportunity to see how people used to live. The kitchen still has cans of coffee and potatoes, the old radio equipment is still the pride of the place, and the instructions for the rudimentary fire prevention methods are still pinned up on the wall by the entrance. If you need an escape from the world, this is it. Number 5. Long Studio. The Long Studio on Fogo Island in Newfoundland, Canada, was built to give artists a secluded space to work. The modern structure has been built on a series of stilts to raise it above the ground, which makes it feel as if it's hovering over the landscape. It's made from traditional materials from the region, such as the rough sawn pine used on the exterior and whitewashed spruce inside, and it's split into 3 parts: the entrance porch, a courtyard, and a studio or a living space. It was inspired by the local fishermen's houses. It's a completely self-sustaining building with power provided from solar panels and its own waste treatment facilities. Designed by Norwegian architects Saunders Architecture, the Long Studio is actually a proof of concept design that they are planning to replicate in other sites across Canada as well. It's a special way to breathe new life onto the island. Number 4. The Solvay Hut. Located on the northeastern ridge of the Matterhorn mountain in Switzerland, the Solvay Hut is the highest mountain hut owned by the Swiss Alpine Club, at 13,133 feet above sea level. The club has a number of huts in the mountains which provide shelter and food to anyone who needs it, but the Solvay Hut is by far the most remote and is intended for use in emergencies only. It was originally built in 1915 when the materials were carried most of the distance by animals, and then a temporary cable car was constructed solely to help with moving the larger pieces on the final stretch. It was fully rebuilt in 1966, but was only fitted with an emergency telephone as late as 1976. This hut really is on the top of the world and is only 1,500 feet from the summit of the Matterhorn. Its precarious position on a ledge offers spectacular views across the mountain range, and it's a favorite spot for climbers to take a well-earned break before completing their trip. Number 3. Ellidaey Island. If you really want an isolated home and an entire island to go with it, then how about Ellidaey Island in Iceland? It's a part of the Vestmannaeyjar archipelago to the south of the country, and there's quite a mystery to the place. It's believed that people have lived there for more than 300 years, mainly because of the abundant puffin population that they hunted and sold to the mainland, as well as raising cattle on the pastures. In such an isolated place, though, it became impractical to keep living like this, so by the 1930s, the island had been completely abandoned. They went on to find, however, that there was nowhere quite like this to find puffins, so a lodge was built on the island so they would have somewhere to stay when they returned on a trip. Since then, there have been intermittent residents in the one structure that remains there. Good for humans, not so good for the puffins. You are surrounded by natural wildlife and complete solitude. There's also a rumor that the government of Iceland has actually given the island to the singer Björk as thanks for increasing Iceland's notoriety around the world. While these rumors remain unsubstantiated, there's still a chance that if you were to spend time here, you'd be wondering to yourself why it's oh so quiet. Number 2. San Colombano Hermitage. First built in 1319, the San Colombano Hermitage was named after the Irish saint Columban, who, according to legend, took up residence in the cave after vanquishing the dragon that originally lived there. A small church was then built at the entrance to one of the small caves to provide accommodation for pilgrims and monks. As you can see, it's quite high up on the rock face and is accessible by 102 steps that have been cut into the rock and lead to a path across the gorge of the River Lino beneath. The Hermitage was in constant use until 1782 and then was looked after by the local people who lived in the valley. More recently, in 1996, the local authorities conducted extensive restoration work to bring back the original beauty of the place, including frescoes that depict Saint Columban battling the dragon, an image of paradise, and the main altar which features a 15th century Madonna surrounded by saints. Number 1. Just Room Enough Island. Just Room Enough Island is, as the name would suggest, a small piece of land or tiny piece of land that is just room enough for a house, and barely anything else. It's one of the almost 2,000 islands of the Thousand Islands chain on the New York side of the St. Lawrence River, and is the location of one of the most famous isolated homes in the region. The island was bought by the Sizeland family in the 1950s, who were looking for a private holiday retreat. They built their house with the walls as far to the edge of the land as possible and placed a bench on the front next to the tree, and that's all the space they had. The house has its own generator, and because it's not connected to the mainland, it is still used today as a retreat. I don't know about you, but being that close to the water makes me kind of nervous. While the original intent was for the family to have peace and isolation, the peculiar home soon attracted the attention of sightseers and tourists who wanted to see it for themselves, and they made the river a lot busier than it had been before. It feels more like a houseboat than a house on an island, so much for the peaceful moat idea, and many have questioned whether it even counts as an island in the first place. It could just be considered a house on a rock. So different areas have different classifications for what constitutes an island, and here an island is defined as a piece of land that is larger than 1 square foot, is permanently above water level, and sustains at least 1 tree. By those metrics, Just Room Enough Island is definitely an island, but if the owners decide to build a floating garage extension, it'll surely be up for debate. Thanks for watching! Do you think your house could compete with any of these? Let us know in the comments below. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!